So now that we've made it through our first commit, let's repeat the process and hopefully speed it up. We'll do some work, we'll add some changes, and then we'll make a commit. So it's day 2 of writing my novel, or maybe it's afternoon of day 1, and I've come back from lunch. I have my outline, I've fleshed out the very basic characters, the 4 characters so far that I've included, and I'm going to start working on chapter 1. So I'm going to make chapter 1 just a text file. I'll just do it from within my text editor, but I could do it from the command line. It doesn't matter how. And I'm just going to save that file. Maybe I'll put something in here like chapter 1. Not sure what I'm going to write in there. And of course, if I go over here to my terminal, what do we expect to see when I type git status? Here it's telling me, as we've seen before, that there's an untracked file called chapter1.txt. Also, if I go into any of the other files, like how about characters.txt or maybe the outline, and I type something else in here, let's just change a single character. How about Jordan? I'm going to make a lowercase j, and I'm going to save this file. If I run git status, now we see something new. It says there's a modified file, outline.txt. It doesn't matter that I just changed the case of a letter. I did change that file, and Git has been watching that file. Unlike chapter 1, which is an untracked file, outline, it's already been added and committed previously, so Git knows about it, and it says, hey, you modified that file. So let's say I actually continue to work, though. I'm not ready to do a commit or anything like that. What should I do? I'm going to start on chapter 1. I'm going to just copy some of the text from The Great Gatsby. This is all available these days online, free, and legally. So I'm just going to take some of this chapter 1. If you really want to follow along, you don't need to, but if you want to, I'll include this link. And then I'm just going to paste this in my chapter 1. Okay? Simultaneously, I decided I need to do a bit more on the outline. So I'll add some here. There we go. Here's a bit more work that I've done on the outline to match some of the stuff that I've been working on in chapter 1 so far. Okay, so I'm going to save both of those files, and then I'm going to go over here again to my terminal, type git status, and we see basically the same thing. The files have changed. I mean, Git's not telling me right now what has been modified in this file. There is a way for us to see exactly what's changed, but for now, all that it says is something changed in outline. So if I'm ready to make a commit, I have to decide, am I going to group those files together? And I am, because they both had to do with chapter 1 and the work I did on chapter 1. So I'm going to add outline.txt, and I'll do it in one go. If I separate them by a space, I'll also add chapter1.txt. And now if I type git status, we see that whenever I do commit next, both of these changes, new file chapter 1 and the modification of outline, both of those will be included in the next commit. So I'm going to commit, git commit -m. What's my message here? What did I do? How about begin work on chapter 1? Okay. And type git status. Quick, what do you think we'll see? We saw it earlier. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is a command called git log. And the git log command doesn't do anything. It's much like git status. It just retrieves information. And the information it retrieves to us is a log of the commits for a given repository. And in this repo, we only have 2 commits. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in here for each commit. Here is one commit. Here is another. And for each one, you can see the author, the dates, the author and the email are things that you can configure, and we did configure early on, so it just uses whatever your local Git has configured for username and email. Then we have the date, and then we have the commit message. And then up top, this crazy looking thing called the commit hash, we don't need to worry about for now, but definitely we will come back and reference. And then here is the second commit. So at this point, honestly, git log is just a way for us to demonstrate that when we ran git commit, it did something. And that's kind of it for now. So it's the next morning. I am very excited. I know how I want to finish chapter 1. So I'm going to start by just adding more to our outline. There we go. So I'll save. Again, if you're following along, you can just change a single character and Git is going to notice. Now, if I type git status, right? It tells us, hey, you modified that file again. Next up, now that I finished that outline for chapter 1, I'm going to go back to the actual file and finish typing the chapter out, which again, I'm just copying from the real Great Gatsby. Okay, so I've got a lot more text in here. I just took it from the Great Gatsby website, and I'm going to save. And now I've finished chapter 1, I outlined it, and I'm ready to go through the same steps again and commit. So I always start with get status. And I'm going to show you one other option for how I can add these two files simultaneously rather than having to add them by name. If I do get add followed by a dot, I actually have a slide on this. Here we are. Get add dot will stage all changes at once. So whatever we have unstaged at the moment, they're not going to be committed. When I use get add dot, both in this case, but if I had 50 files that were modified, all 50 would be staged. And it can be useful, but also if you've worked on a bunch of things and disparate features that aren't necessarily ready to all be committed at once, it's much better to be surgical when you make your commits. But for now, I finished chapter 1, the outline had to do with chapter 1, so I'll add both. If I type get status, we can see both of those have been modified, and now I'll commit. Git commit -m, finish chapter 1. Great. Type get log just as proof, and there it is, finish chapter 1. Okay, so then I go to bed, and I'm having a real rough time with how long chapter 1 is. And I'm thinking about it at night as I'm in bed. I'm like, I really need to fix that in the next morning. I need to break this chapter up. So that's what I decide to do. I wake up, and I move my outline around a bit to reflect my new changes. I decide that right here, I want to split my outline. So I'm going to add chapter 2 now starts right here. So I'm just going to move some content around. Of course, by doing that and saving the file, I've now dirtied our working tree, meaning that we have some changes that have not yet been committed. Then I'll go to the chapter 1 file. I'm going to take half of this, the second half, and cut it out of here, save this file, and then I'm going to make a chapter 2 file, chapter2.txt, and I'm going to paste that in there and save. So now I have updated chapter 1, I've updated the outline, and I've created a new file, chapter 2. If I saved all 3 files, which I did, and I run get status, Git tells us, hey, there's 3 things that changed. Really, 2 things that it knows for sure were modified, and a third untracked file that it's aware of. Vaguely, it sees that it exists, but it's not tracking the changes. So I'm going to add all of them, and we can use the same shortcut I showed you, git add dot, because they all have to do with the same thing. It's just the same piece of work. Something like when I commit, my message will be, split chapter 1 into 2 pieces, or something like that. Looks good. Type get status, working tree clean, and get log. We see we have a new commit.